Hey, what's up, guys? It's Team Dive Budget. We got Jake here. He's about to deck profile out his Tachikaze Gaia Emperor deck profile. I mean, the real star of the show, though. Take it away, dog.
Alright, what's up, guys? So to start things off, we'll start with our starter. I use Baby Chimera. I see a lot of people using the new guy, Little Tyranno, which is good for like when control was more prevalent. For the burst potential, but Baby Chimera just helps with consistency so much. You can search for any grade 1, CB1, it'll gain 3k, it helps you build columns, you can get attackers with it. Like, this card just helps with so many things, and if you lose it, it's not the end of the world. Gaia has like more options now, back in the day. So I feel pretty confident using this.
Yeah, I mean, the only really relevant stuff that takes it out right now is like ZTB sometimes. I mean, Overlord, but like, that's not very prevalent at the moment.
No, and like Overlord, you've got a slew of problems to deal with anyway. Like, but so for my grade 3 lineup, we're doing obviously for the boy Emperor Dragon, Gaia Emperor. Yeah,
two emperors.
Yeah. They want you to really be sure that he's an emperor. His stride skill is really simple. It's CB1. You call up to 2 cards from your hand, choose 2 of your units, and they gain revival skills. It's pretty obvious how this card can set up a lot of combos for the deck. You can like target Baby Chimera and get a search off of Baby Chimera and then revive it immediately to use it for the next turn or in the same turn. And as we go into more of the cards in the deck, it's really obvious like just how well this can set up things. This is a must-have. Like this is, you have to ride this. It's so important to get to this card.
It pulls the entire deck together.
Yeah. However, in the case that you don't get to it, I am running 1 Gaia Desperado. This card doesn't do a whole lot. If a unit gets retired to your Vanguard's Engorge ability, you can counterblast 1 and draw a card. It's not a huge thing. It doesn't really set up anything, but it can help you dig a little bit more for that Gaia Emperor if you don't get it. It's pretty bad if you write it, but it makes the most of a bad situation. So I run 1. And then as a very powerful rearguard, I run 3 Heavy Arzine. So this card is Counterblast 1. If it's engorged, you can check the top 4 cards of your deck, call 2 of them to rearguard, and put the other 2 on the bottom of your deck. It's really good for digging, for pieces, really helps you set up if you just don't have enough rearguards in your hand, and if you do have enough rearguards, like this can go in really hard. You know, give your other rearguard the revival skill with Gaia, swing with that first unboosted, swing with this, engorge, bring that back, swing again. And that's 3 attacks before you even get into your Vanguard swing.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of setup because it has to engorge itself and then be eaten, but I mean, between the combos, like, it's fine.
It's so easy to do this, and it doesn't even matter if, like, you lose out on the revival skill on the front row rearguard because this calls 2 things. You might be able to get a better rearguard than you had before, like...
Yeah, I mean, it's more attacks. That's what's important.
Yeah, this thing's really good. So, for grade 2s... we are running 4 Diablo Cannon. It's a very simple card. Continues, it just gains 2k if you have a Gaia Vanguard. This actually applies like during either player's turn, so your opponent can't just attack over it. That's a nice little bonus. So it's an 11k attacker, but as a good push option, its second ability is if it is engorged and it gets retired to your Vanguard's ability, either engorge or by its skill, you can discard 1 card to revive it and it'll gain 5k. This is really good as like a final push option. You can bring it back like several times, especially like on Dogma turns. Like this card is very important.
Yeah, it comes back as 16k on its own.
Yeah, like this is fantastic. After that, we have the big beat stick of the deck. We run 4 Chasmalux, 10k grade 2 of your real Gaia. When you write it or call it, it doesn't lose 5k. Or if you have a Gaia Vanguard already, it'll just keep the power. And then for every face-up unit in your G zone with the engorge ability, it gains 3k. So this thing just scales insanely as you get later into the game. By second stride, this thing is 19 on its own. 7k booster, it's a 26 column, and you don't have to do anything with that. It just comes out like that. This thing is utterly fantastic and helps with early rush because this deck does have some guarding problems, especially against multi-attack decks. So this thing really helps you in a lot of ways. And then to round up the grade 2 lineup, I'm running 2 Tank Mammoth. By today's standards, this card is really clunky, but of all of the options that Tachikaze has right now for grade 2s, I feel like this is the best option. It's if you don't have anything else, it can bring itself back for a Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. It'll come out as 11. It can help set you up for more attacks, and also it's non-GB, so you can actually use this early game if you have the right setup, like swing with it in a booster for like 12, 15 something, sack it with your Vanguard's Engorge ability. You won't get any benefits, but it'll come back and get you an extra attack.
Yeah, so after all, the elephant's range is long.
That it is, Bushiroad. Anyway, we are running 4 PG, and I actually have it split a little differently. So I'm running 3 Savage Guardian, the unflip PG. You know, if you guard with it and you have another copy in your drop zone, you countercharge 1. Then I'm running 1 of the Engorge PG. Now this card's really cool. It's Counterblast 1. When it becomes engorged, because it has the Engorge ability, it gains 5k, and at the end of the turn you can return it to your hand. Now, if you're fighting a deck where like you don't have your PG or you just need the extra guard, you can actually search this with Baby Chimera, go ahead and engorge it, and then add it back to your hand. It just nets you a PG. And then if you draw it later, like it can attack on its own. Like this card is definitely good as a supplement, but the countercharge is really important this deck. So like, I feel comfortable just 1 and doing this. After that, we are running 4 Prism Bird. It's Tachikaze's stride fodder, you know, call it, helps you search for a Gaia Emperor.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to be on the Gaia Emperor in this deck over anything else.
Yeah, so you want to max out on this card.
Yeah, you can't really afford to take any liberties there.
Yeah, even though I'm running 8 grade 2 or 8 grade 3s, like you really need this card to help fix you if you're like in a bad, like if you don't have Gaia Emperor. Like the assurance is so important. So for this, next we are going to do 3 Raven Terra. This card is absolutely nuts. This card is like one of the best things to come out of GBT13. So it has the Engorge ability itself, but its thing is you can Soul Blast 1, and when it's retired by your Vanguard skill, you can call it back to rear guard, and then if you have 1 or less face-up damage, it lets you countercharge 1. So you can just go all in with your counterblast, like 1 for your stride, 1 for Baby Chimera, 1 for Gaia's on stride skill, and then this just makes sure that you're okay. This like fixes you up and gets you another booster or attacker, like if you have the right setup. Like
I mean, a Soul Blast to get your revive back and then also countercharge is like nothing.
Yeah,
that's like Ganslot levels of free.
Yeah, this card is utterly fantastic, and it's helped like smooth out the edges on this deck so much. So I want to run 3 of this. Next, I run 2 Freezer Nicks. When it's retired, and you have a Gaia Vanguard, you countercharge 1, soul charge 1, give a unit 2k. This deck does have problems with soul, especially if you like with spamming Raven Terra so much. So I like this just as a supplemental soul charge more than anything. Also, a conditionless countercharge is really nice. The 2k can be relevant sometimes, so I like this as a 2 of. It definitely helps the deck along.
Yeah, I mean, it puts your amount of countercharges at 5, which is more than enough resource management, and maybe Chimera can search him anyway.
Exactly, so. And then for my last, I have this fantastic push card, Spread Amarga. So this guy is just Counterblast 1 when he's retired. In general, you draw a card and then call any card from your hand to rear guard. This helps so much, especially like, so on Dogma turns, like say like you drive check some things and it's like, oh man, I wish I had this before I call my field, when I was calling my field to like attack with. Well, you can sack this and go ahead and get that attacker out. It helps like push in so many ways and builds up your field, and it lets you draw a card on top of that. So like you could have the attacker already in hand, or you might draw into something better. Like this card is fantastic, and again with Raven Terra, like the counter blast is nothing. Like sometimes you want that counter blast so that you can get the counter charge off with Raven Terra. So like this. Then to the grade zeros, we have 4 heal triggers. The new heal trigger, G-Guard, Bind It, and another heal in your drop zone, counter charge 1 or soul charge 1.
We see a lot of cards that go through both of those resources really, really heavily, so
yeah,
no reason not to play them anyway.
Exactly. Like this is a no-brainer. Then we are going to do 4 Dynodile. Pop it in the soul, get a counter charge. It's really good for the incidental counter charge. Yeah, I feel like the Gaia crit, like the crit that like all the G decks got, like doesn't really have much application in this deck these days. I feel like you need to max out on this over
Especially
that
since
one.
you can't even use it on Dogma turns.
Exactly. So yeah, I like this card a lot. And speaking of which, I don't have the Gaia crits, so these are just 2 vanilla crits. But ideally, they would be the Gaia crits.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that rounds up that. Then we were running 3 draw triggers. You're running the Margle clone. There's no reason to run anything else. I've seen a lot of people like play around with their trigger lineup in Gaia decks. I really feel like Gaia needs the draw triggers, at least 3. This really helps you stabilize. It helps you get combo pieces, and especially like since the deck so often has like really clunky guarding options because you want to hold on to so many cards for your plays, that you know the chance of hitting a draw trigger on a damage check really helps you with survivability. Like you have to have draw triggers in this deck, I feel like. And then the star of the show, 3 Koala Magnum.
Only 3. This video's over.
This card is amazing. It's when you retire it, you put it on the bottom of your deck, draw a card, and it gains 5k. Not only does it replace itself and help boost power, but this constantly shovels itself back in the deck, and then you draw a card that's not Koala Magnum. As the game goes on, you keep spamming this. It is more and more likely that you'll hit these stand triggers, so you can actually start changing up your plays to accommodate stands, because it'll more likely happen. I run 3 because I want to make room for the draw triggers, and I don't run anything less than 6 crit. I already feel like a little uncomfortable with 6 crits sometimes, so I definitely think 3 is a good number on this. So we are done with the main deck now. We'll go into our G zone. For G guards, we run 2 Dimorph Phalanx. This card's pretty straightforward. If you have less rear guards than your opponent, it gains 5k. That's so easy. That's so obnoxiously easy. Even if you're like 1 off from getting the skill, you can intercept and then G-guard with this and get the 5k bonus. Like this just is always live. So it's a good for 2. Next we have 1 Blockade Genga. This card's a little situational because you have to retire one of your own rear guards to gain 10k, and usually whatever's left on your field is stuff that you want to keep for the next turn, or like a valuable intercept. So at that point it would be just better to go into Dimorph Phalanx, but it does have the ability that gives 2 of your units the ability that if they get retired during your opponent's turn, they can go back to your hand. This includes retired from Guardian Circle. So if you give it to your 2 front row interceptors, you can then intercept with them, they'll go to the drop zone, and then they pop back into your hand. So this is like your answer to multi-attack decks, or just like getting cards back into your hand.
Yeah, if you can manage to actually end your turn with a full front row of 2 intercepts, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, so that's why I run only 1. And then the MVP, the G-Guards, Bullish Primer. This is our flipping G-Guard, no cost, but all it says is it gains 5k shield for every open circle you have. This thing hits insane shield value, and this is kind of like what I was talking about with the guarding options in Gaia. Gaia can tank huge attacks, no problem, because of this card. It has a problem, though, with like multi-attack decks, so really, like, it's valuable with this deck to, like, save taking damage for the smaller attacks that like you don't want to waste guard on, and then this alone can like PG the Vanguard. This thing like is insane and answers like a lot of the problems the guy had before with guarding. So yeah, definitely 2 of that. Next into the strides, we are running 1 GB8 Vulcan Tyranno. It has the engorge ability itself, and then it has a a blanket auto skill that every time a rearguard is retired during your turn, you get it and another rearguard 10k, and then you retire an opponent's rearguard. If you draw into a bunch of engorge units, especially ones that can like revive themselves or replace themselves, you can hit for insane amounts of power and multi-attack with this card. It's situational, but it definitely deserves a spot in the deck. After that, we are running 4 Gaia Dynast. Gaia Dynast is a bit outclassed these days. GB3 is when your rearguard's retired by this unit, you can counterblast 1, call back, and then this unit and that unit gain 3k. You don't really worry about that. Its main thing is, so when it attacks, you can flip up a copy of it when it's engorged, choose one of your rear guards, and then retire all units in that column, including the opponent's units. On top of that, you get to countercharge 1. Gaia Dynast is basically the card you go into if you don't have good resources, or if you have like a really awkward setup. It has a lot of high value. It gets retires off, gets you a countercharge. This card takes no setup whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, you engorge it, and then you just wipe a column.
Yeah, like, so I run 4 of this, because a lot of times, like, if you need to G-assist, I'll take out 2 and then be like, oh man, I wish I still had a Gaia Dynast, so I like 4 of them. After that, we are running 4 New Destruction Emperor Gaia Devastate. This card is quite frankly insane. It's obviously got the engorge ability, and then its other ability is counterblast 1 and flip a copy of it. When it's engorged, for every face-up unit in your G zone, you choose 2 circles, put all units in those circles into the drop zone, and then if 3 or more units of your units were retired for this skill, this unit will gain plus 10k, plus 1 crit, and plus 1 drive. This card puts an insane amount of pressure. You can use it early game to wipe 2 rear guards. Oh, it also draws you a card. I forgot to mention that. It will draw you a card conditionlessly. This card is great as a first stride, it's great as late game, and because of the way it's worded, not only you can actually break your own locked cards with this card, and be able to also pop your opponent's resist units. Like, this card is so good, and late game, like, you can just wipe a board with this thing and still be able to get the power-up skill off of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's field control, resource management, plussing, combo attacks, setup. It's everything the deck wants to do in a card.
Yeah, like, this card is utterly fantastic. Definitely you want to run 4 of this. And then, so the last 2 cards of the G-Zone, we are running 2 Absolute Ruler Gluttony Dogma.
Hail Dogma.
Hail Dogma. So, I only run 2 of this card because really at the point that Gaia is at, you can combo so well off of this card that you just need to use it 1 turn. In that 1 turn, you are either going to beat your opponent's face in, or you're going to die trying. Like, I have never been in a situation playing this deck where I needed to go into Dogma more than once. Like, if I had to go another stride turn after that, the game was pretty much over anyway. The opponent had, like, nothing to guard with, so.
Yeah, if you were at a point where you would get to a second one in against other aggro decks, you definitely don't have the resources for it.
Yeah.
If you even get to that point at all. Like, against aggro decks, the first one kills them, or then you die trying. Or if you somehow live, you don't have the resources for a second one. And against control decks, you won't get to use this more than once, if at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on what kind of control deck you're fighting.
Yeah, this takes, like, so much setup, because you have to, because what it says is, if you sack 5, if you sack 3 rear guards, it'll gain 10k by flipping up a copy. And if you sack 5 rear guards, it gains the once per turn skill that after it attacks, it can stand back up for 2 more drive checks. Now, actually, Something I found out from the page on Facebook that I'm a big fan of, Dinosaur Laser Beam Fight Club, is a Tachikaze exclusive clan group, is they actually emailed Bushy about this because of a lot of debate. You can actually activate the Cost of Engorge a second time if this unit's already engorged. So you can swing with it, sack your entire field so that you get the restand off, and then when it stands back up again, you can engorge again to trigger all of those units that were activated when they're retired for the opponent's unit. You won't get another restand, but you can trigger your Diablo Cannon, you can trigger your Raven Terra, and you can just go. You can trigger your Heavy Arzine. Like, you can go off on so many attacks. Like, on average, I get 8 attacks on a Dogma turn. Like when I properly have the setup to go into it.
Because after Dogma stands, like, you sack 5, but at least 2 are coming back as a Gaia Emperor, and then you have loads of things that come back on their own. Your full board's coming back more than likely, and then the fact that you can engorge Dogma again, you can trigger even more things that come back on their own.
Yeah, so you just get an insane number of attacks with this. That's why, like, you only need 2 of this. Like, this card is one of the most insane aggro turns, like, we can see in the game if you do it right.
Yeah.
So
2 is fun.
2 is fine.
I mean, you could argue that the other 2 Gaia Dynasts could easily be these other 2, but the other 2 Gaia Dynasts and the other 2 Dogma, like, both are pretty much equally as unimportant.
Exactly.
So it really doesn't matter. I mean, if you have the money, you can play 4 Dogma, more power to you. It doesn't matter.
Well, if you really had the money, you'd be replacing the 2 Dynasts with a Drachma and then maybe a Seabreeze.
Yeah.
So, like, regardless, like, you really, there's only really room for 2 Dogma these days anyway.
Yeah, that's honestly what those two should be.
Yeah. So yeah, that sums up my Gaia deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, like and subscribe to our channel.